So firstly, thank you everyone for coming. I know everyone's really busy and it's a really hot day and the city decided to close down every street 2 blocks around us just to make it even more challenging. So I know a few people are on their way that couldn't make it on time, but they're gonna join us shortly. So look, it gives me great pleasure to I guess to host this event. Something that means a heck of a lot to me. Mental illness is something that affects 1 in 4 people, and there's a lot of stigma attached to it. And I lost one of my best friends to suicide only 9 months ago, so it's something that's really close to my heart. And I know in this community we've lost 3 people inside of this community in the last 19 months as well. So I know it's something that's probably affected a whole bunch of people in this room also. PeaceLove Studios are going to be part of our community come next year. They're going to... what does that mean? Speak louder. No, these guys are going to speak with a microphone. So, so PeaceLove are going to be in this community hopefully as early as March next year, which I think is something that I'm certainly really looking forward to. And we're going to have 3 speakers today. We're going to have some food, and then we're going to have a pretty amazing art event, let's say. I was here yesterday for the one we did yesterday, and it was pretty awesome. So I hope all of you can stay for the art expression, which is really amazing. You get to create a piece of art, and you also get to tell your story about that art too. So we're going to have some speakers. We're going to have a dinner. We're going to have a short meditation, and then we're going to do our art workshop. So with that, I'll introduce Jeff Spar, who's the what are you, the founding entity of PeaceLove Studios, to speak. And look, if everyone at the back wouldn't mind just moving forward a little bit, just so we can create a bit more energy, that would be awesome. So that we can create some energy and not have any barriers of these crazy trees would be fantastic. So Mr. Spar, over to you.
All right, that's how I like to start. That's me. First of all, thank you, Mark. Where did he go? There he is. Mark, thank you for the kind introduction. And
by the way, you're standing in front of the screen.
Oh, I already blew it, right? Okay, thank you, Mark. Thanks again for the kind introduction. We're excited to be here. I'd be remiss in mentioning, Mark has been a huge champion and advocate for PeaceLove, and we've been on a journey here for 4 or 5 years, and I know when I meet somebody from the first second, this guy totally understood, what we were doing and the possibility and the significance of our work and the opportunity to really do something special to enhance not only the mental wellness of this community, but hopefully in other cities and communities around the country that will look at what you're doing here. So Mark, I thank you for that. And give me a hand. Thank people like that. On a personal note, I can't tell you how pumped I am to be here. I'm having a great day. I'm just coming over from Zappos, and I'm really fired up. And I think our whole team of PeaceLove that's here for the week, and you'll get to meet them throughout the day. But for those of you that aren't familiar, PeaceLove is a movement. It's a movement that's trying to help people find peace of mind. And we're doing that, through expressive arts and a symbol of hope and acceptance. And today you're going to have a wonderful opportunity to experience all of those different things in the context of the next 4 hours and the journey that Amy and Dre will lead you through. But the coolest thing that I'm really excited about is what you're going to be doing today and enjoying and hopefully getting something out of is exactly the work that we're going to be doing when we open here in March next year, and hopefully being able to touch and affect so many people's lives. So I'm really pumped about that. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to challenge you folks, if I can, for a second. And I'd like to challenge you, let's see if I can do this. I'd like to, give me a second to paint this. Okay, paint that. put the old. I'm going to challenge, all of you to stop for a moment. I want you to turn your iPhones off and your iPads and everything else. Life moves awful quickly. I've been talking with a bunch of people about it. It's just crazy, the pace at which we're going. And I think we forget many times to just stop for a moment and really give some consideration to what gives us some peace of mind. And I think if you do that today, when you finish this workshop, what you think might give you peace of mind might be a little different than what you think as you start this morning. So with that, the name of our workshop is Walk in My Shoes, and I thought that a good way to start would be to put you in my shoes. And but I want to get clear right up front. I'm one of the lucky ones, as I'm sitting here in front of you today. I'm lucky because I got diagnosed with OCD when I was 23 years old, and it all looks good to you on the outside. But I've fought a very difficult illness against an invisible opponent that has been debilitating at times and affects me every day, even as I'm sitting up here in front of you today. But through medication and a loving family and wife and friends, exposure therapy that I'm in doing every other week now, I've been able to lead a productive life. I got 3 beautiful kids and a great life. But again, 1 in 4 people, as Mark mentioned, 1 in 4 people suffer from a diagnosable mental illness. But the stat that really is incredible is 2/3. 2/3 of us won't get the help that we need and deserve, primarily due to stigma. And personally, I think that sucks. All right? And 20 years ago, I was coming home from work one day, and when you're desperate, you'll try anything. Someone had told me that painting might be good for me. So, what the heck, I stopped at the paint store, picked up a bunch of paints, came home, and started painting. Well, you're looking at the self-proclaimed Forrest Gump of painting right here, okay? I never stopped. And it literally changed the course of my life and gave me, some peace of mind. And, but still, all this time, I was looking for more. I was 45, I think, at the time, not to age myself, and I was selling fabric for a living, not exactly, changing the world, okay? And probably wasn't doing as well as I thought I could do. I'm a pretty inspired guy with my own health. And then I caught a break. I got hit by a lightning bolt. Now, just so you don't worry, I didn't get hit by a real lightning bolt. I've been waiting to get hit by that one for my health. Just kind of hit me and it's all gone. That's not too realistic, as we know. But in this case, the Discovery Channel had found out about my story. And they came to Rhode Island, and my wife Jen and I gave them complete access to our family for 3 days. 3 days in the hope of putting a face on mental illness. So the piece aired about 6 minutes later. And I remember watching it when it came on the air, a little nervous, but I'm watching this thing, and I had almost like an out-of-body experience. And I'm watching the television, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I want to be that guy. I mean, he's calm, he's cool, he's collective, he's kind of motivational, he's inspirational, decent looking, right? I said, I want to be him. So shortly thereafter, I remember going to my dad, and he gave me some good advice. I was telling him about this revelation. He says, hey, Jeff, he says, you got to find a way to find what you can do in life better than anybody. And he says, I don't care what it is, just find it. But unfortunately, he didn't have the answer, because nobody has the answer except you. Well, I went to my studio, shortly thereafter, and that's where I process information best. And anybody that's watched me paint or seen me paint, I'm a mad scientist. I'm working multiple canvases, and I got different mediums and inspiration boards and paints and all kinds of stuff. And I keep painting my alter ego, this guy right here. And I'm thinking, and all of a sudden I start making these kind of circles around my head. And in my studio that day, I figured it out. On the outside of this target, if you will, I was like to think I was a compassionate, person. I was a loving father, son, brother, empathetic, given my own, personal struggles in life. It got a little smaller. I was a self-taught artist. I have a fairly unlikely career as an artist for a guy that has no idea what he's doing, number one. And number two, it helped me. I knew the impact of art on my own life. That target got smaller. I was a teacher and a mentor. That was incredible. I mean, you're talking to a guy that has no idea what he was doing. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an art therapist. Basically, I'm a nobody. I'm just a guy that showed up one day on a children's psychiatric ward, okay? And a psychiatric ward at a hospital that not only was I a board member, but I was a patient. And I painted. I figured it helped me. I figured maybe it helped these kids. That's it. That's how it all started. That target got smaller. I was someone that suffered from mental illness. Well, then it kind of came to me. I said, maybe, just maybe, I'm somebody that's uniquely qualified to articulate and communicate a message of hope and acceptance on a really difficult issue that as a society we have not gotten our hands on yet. So I went out and I had a dream. I dreamed big. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't cost any more to dream big. And I dreamed and had a vision that it would be possible to build a symbol of hope and acceptance for mental health. Very similar to what the Livestrong, the yellow bracelet and the pink ribbon. I had painted that 9 years ago, and it was deeply personal to me. It stood for peace of mind and love in your heart. And I stand in front of you today honestly believing that that's going to help transform how this society and the world looks at mental health and mental illness. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it, all right? And what's going to happen now is we're going to talk Amy, who's both our program director and an author, and Dre Gardner, who's a yoga master, two incredibly talented individuals in their own right who have their own stories, are going to walk you through and take you through a journey to kind of discover your story. So I thank you for being here today and taking the time out of your busy day, and I hope that you enjoy the journey with these guys today. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so next we've got Amy. She's just getting mic'd up. Amy's the author of this pretty amazingly powerful little book. This is probably the most powerful little book I've ever sort of flicked through. I was going to say read, but most of it is pictures, not read. As a gift for everybody here, we've got you all a copy of Amy's book, so you'll be able to take a copy before you leave today. I had the pleasure of just meeting Amy only a few days ago. We went to Carson Kitchen. We tried pretty much everything on the menu. She had a little bit of everything, and I was privileged to listen to her speak yesterday. So I know you're in for an absolute treat. So with that, I'll leave you with Amy.
So by now you may be wondering, is this talk about mental illness? Is this talk about mental wellness? Is this about mental health? What the heck are we talking about here? And with PeaceLove, we are actually talking about mental health and mental wellness. But we are also being advocates for people who have mental illness, because they are the people who have the hardest time achieving mental health, positive mental health, and achieving mental wellness. And there's not a lot out there helping those people on that endeavor. But really, we're about mental wellness for all people, and that's what our organization seeks to do. What I'm going to talk to you about today is my journey. And my journey does include mental illness. I have depression and anxiety. But what I have found along my journey is that a lot of people can relate to my story, whether they have mental illness or not. Because mental health is something that we all have, and mental wellness is something that we all try to achieve. And we as a society are not very good at taking care of ourselves mentally. We don't teach children how to do it. We don't really talk about it. We get stressed and busy, and we're in this lifestyle that's just sort of crazy. And And so what I have found is that by sharing my story, I get people who understand a lot of the same feelings, because as humans, we all have emotions and feelings and go through similar experiences, even if you're not all the way on the end of the spectrum of mental illness. My story, I like to start with this picture. This is a picture of me at graduation from high school, and I'm the valedictorian. And this is a picture that I share not because I'm proud of this moment, but because it's a moment that I actually held in shame for many, many years. What you see here is a very successful young woman. She did really well in school. She did everything she was supposed to do. Everyone looked at her and saw achievement, happiness, success. But what was happening underneath that surface was very, very different. I hated myself. I felt worthless. Every attempt to do something better was an attempt to convince people that I was worthwhile, so that they wouldn't find out who I really was. Because I was struggling with depression and anxiety, and you can't see it. That's the thing about mental health issues, is you can't see them unless somebody has an outburst or behavior that is not normal. Until that happens, you don't know. It's invisible. And that's what this picture demonstrates to me. It demonstrates the secret that I was holding, the silence that I had, and the shame that I had of not being okay, of struggling and being afraid to talk about it. And I kept up this image for a very long time, many, many years, until I couldn't keep it up anymore. And this is a painting that I did around the time I had a breakdown. And I managed to make it to 27 years old before I totally cracked open. I had a few slips along the way. I actually had a suicide attempt when I was in college, but everybody wrote that off as sophomore slump. Doesn't everybody struggle in their sophomore year? You're not sure if you're in the right path, college is hard, you're away from home. It's a tough time, right? Sophomore slump. And I took some medication, I saw the school therapist for a little while, and after a few months I was fine, recovered better. And that's what everyone wanted to believe, including myself. Even though I knew deep down I wasn't okay, that it wasn't gone, that it wasn't better, that it was still there. But I kept going, and I went on to be a teacher and then a department head, and was really continuing on this story of success until I couldn't do it anymore, and I fell apart. And that was really a big change for me and for the people around me, because all of a sudden this person who was so successful and so happy and so okay in the world was suddenly saying, no, I'm not okay. This is not okay. This is not who I am. This smiling, happy, successful person is not who I really am. And I couldn't keep up that facade anymore. This is what saved me. This actual box of colored pencils. I actually got these colored pencils while I was a patient on an inpatient unit at a psychiatric hospital. I saw another patient doodling, and I'd always doodled and kind of done art, but I didn't really think of myself as talented or artistic in any way, shape, or form. But I saw this patient doodling, and for those of you, if you've ever been to a psych unit, there's not a whole lot to do there. They take everything away from you. You are in sort of a vacuum world, and you're sort of stuck there, and you're stuck there with your mind, which is great. And so I saw this patient doodling. I was like, why the hell not? I'll doodle too. And a friend was coming to visit me, and I could see outside of the group room, out the window, I could see a Rite Aid pharmacy, and I called her up and said, on your way in to visit me, could you pick me up some colored pencils? And so she brought me some colored pencils, and someone had given me a journal that didn't have any lines. And so I just started to doodle. But what came out of those doodles was expression, emotion, feelings that I had never shared with anyone before. I was letting it out. My father actually called it emotional vomit. I just was like, phew, and it was coming out, and it was coming out in a safe way. Sorry, I'm very dramatic talk. And it was coming out in a safe way. I wasn't hurting myself anymore. Up until that point, I had been a self-injurer, a cutter. I also had dealt with an eating disorder, and those were the tools that I used to try to cope with my depression and anxiety. This offered me a different tool. And so I just started making art. And what happened was amazing, because for the first time, I was expressing my feelings. I was telling people, this is how I feel. This is what's going on. And what was so amazing is people were getting it. For so long, I had felt so alone. I thought nobody would understand. And here I am drawing these pictures, and people are looking at them and going, oh my God, yeah, I know. I know that feeling. I've been there. I deal with that too. And it wasn't just the psychiatric patients. It was other people who were looking at it and going, yes, I have that feeling too. And it was this amazing revelation to me that other people struggle, that mental wellness is a struggle for people, all people. And so what I'd like to do is take you through some of the pictures to tell my story. I'm not going to take you through all of them because there are 77 of them. I had a lot to say that year. But you are going to be able to walk away tonight with all 77 in that book. I put them together in a book, and so you can actually go on the whole journey. But I'm going to take you on part of the journey and tell you a little bit more about my own mental wellness and the journey I was on, and maybe you'll see glimpses of your own mental wellness along the way. So this is the first drawing I ever did. It says, inside of me, things are boiling over. And it's a pot, obviously, and it's got gooky, yucky stuff, and it's all coming out. And what was happening for me is that I could no longer contain those emotions. They were bubbling up and out, and I couldn't keep them in. And one of the things that we are taught as a society is hold your emotions in, swallow them, stuff them, keep them in, don't show them. You're talking to someone, they start tearing up, what's the first thing they start to do? I'm fine, I'm fine. That's what we're taught. Put them away. And I had gotten to a point where they were boiling over and I couldn't put them away anymore. What I find interesting about this drawing is that I have the knob turned on high. It took me a long time to realize that I had the ability to turn the knob down, but I hadn't learned the skills yet of how to do that. And so at the time, I didn't really know that I had control of that. Just like we all have control of our mental wellness and how we take care of ourselves emotionally. Sometimes the wrong choice seems so familiar. It can be so inviting, so enticing. It's just so familiar, so very comfortable, like coming home or like embracing an old friend. Sometimes I wonder how something so comforting can be so damaging. This is actually about my behaviors, my coping mechanisms. People have often asked me, I just don't understand, how would cutting make you feel better? How would starving yourself make you feel better? I don't get it, I don't understand. Those are the tools that I picked up along the way. And you may or may not understand that particular thing, but I can guarantee you that you have habits in your life that do the same thing for you. Everybody knows about diet. Everybody knows about physical wellness, working out, going to the gym. Now I want you to think about a horrible day. You've had a fight with your boss, everything went wrong at home, your spouse is mad at you, your kids are like making a mess everywhere, it's raining, and you get in your car and you realize it's on empty, and God damn it, I've got to go pump gas, and you're standing in the rain, pumping the gas, and you think, I could just go inside and get a Twinkie. I know I'm on a diet. I know I'm not supposed to do this, but it would make it all better if I got that Twinkie. Or I really don't want to go to the gym tonight. I'm having a day from hell. And you're standing there in the rain, pumping that gas, and you're thinking, I could just get back in the car and drive home. And what do? You make those choices. You go in and you buy the Twinkie. You go home and put your jammies on. And you feel better for about this long. And then the guilt creeps in. And you start thinking, I just blew my diet for a lousy Twinkie in a parking lot. Damn! And I didn't go to the gym again. Oh my God, I'm supposed to be working out. You know what you need to do to take care of yourself. You know that those behaviors are not going to help you, but they make you feel better for just a moment, and so you do them. And it's the same way with me. My coping mechanisms might not be the traditional ones of, eating junk food or skipping the gym, but they're what I found along the way, for whatever reason. And they make you feel better. They're safe to you. It's like coming home. Even though you know that that comfort isn't going to last, and that comfort is actually working against you and working against your mental health. We still do it, but it's hard not to. The calmness on the outside is threatening to crack. Sort of goes back to that same feeling of bubbling over. We hold it together. We keep it okay. Our mental wellness, we're not paying attention to it. We're stressed out, we're doing too many things, but we're okay, right? We're multitaskers. We can do this and this and this and this and this and this, and then something happens. You spill your coffee. You trip. You drop something in a puddle. Something little small thing happens and you just freak. Maybe you break out into tears. Maybe you snap at your kid in anger. Whatever it is, you just kind of lose it. Your calmness cracked. It split wide open. And it really had nothing to do with the incident. It's that you weren't taking care of yourself. And you're letting your mental wellness kind of go to the side, and then all of a sudden, that thing makes it so you can't contain it anymore. We all do that. We all stop taking care of ourselves mentally. And then the straw that breaks the camel's back happens, and bing, it all breaks loose. I don't know what that drumming weird noise is. It sounds like
Praying mantis.
Is it the praying mantis?
It's a drum. Yeah, they don't do the praying mantis. They do a drum circle. They do a drum circle till sunset, and then they'll do the praying mantis.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I was like, are fighter jets coming down? What's going on? All right.
You know that anxiety part?
Yeah, that anxiety. Needing people but not able to reach out. Recoiling from people when they reach out to me. We all do this. We want help, we need help. But then someone offers, no, I'm fine, I got it. I can do this all myself. I can take care of myself. I'm good. That's what we do in our society. We take care of ourselves. We're autonomous. We're individualized. And we do it ourselves, even when we know we need help. And this would happen to me over and over again. I would actually leave school from my teaching job on Fridays and go home and pray that someone would call me, a friend, my parents, my sister, somebody would call and tell me that I was worthwhile, that they loved me, that there was a reason I was here on this earth. And then someone would call and the phone would ring and I'd look at the caller ID and I'd curl up in a ball and I wouldn't answer it. Because for as much as I needed the help, I didn't want to. It scared me to have to rely on somebody else. It scared me to need help. It scared me to ask for help. And we all do that. We can do it ourselves, right? People have many different ways of trying to help me out of the hole. I just need someone to come down and listen. Eventually, I'll find my own way out. So each person around that hole represents someone different in my life. There are people who will try to give you the solution. If you just did this, you'll feel better. If you just do that, you'll feel better. There are people who, try to convince you of all the wonderful things in your life. Okay, great, I've got all these wonderful things in my life, but I still feel like crap. Doesn't really help me. There are people who get depressed with you, which really doesn't help because then you got two people sitting in the hole feeling depressed. And what I found is that nobody could solve it for me. Nobody could make it better except just listening. Not giving me advice, not telling me what to do, not trying to fix it, just listening without judgment. And that's a really hard thing to do. It's really hard to listen to another person and not judge, not suggest something, not give advice, not want to suddenly tell your story. Oh my God, yeah, that happened to me too. Let me tell you all about my stuff. It's really hard just to listen. And I've gone through this on the other side. My partner struggles with depression as well. And it's been interesting for me to be on the other side and want to fix it and want to make it better, and you just can't. And the person just is on their own there trying to get through that moment. And all you can do is listen. Lost logic test. Imagine a Granny Smith apple. Everyone knows it's green. I know it's green. So why is it that no matter how hard I try, I see purple? This conversation actually happened. I was sitting on the hospital bed with my sister, and she's like, I don't get it. I don't get it. You were valedictorian, you went to a good college, you have a great job, you're a successful teacher, you have all these good things in your life, you've got an apartment and friends, and why are you depressed? I don't get it. It's the same thing that happened when Robin Williams killed himself. Everyone was like, I don't get it. He had so much. He made people laugh. So many people loved him. But the thing is, it doesn't really matter, because if that's not how you feel on the inside, none of that touches you. And that's what I was trying to explain to my sister. I know that I am a talented person. I know that I have a lot of people who love me. But it doesn't matter when I'm in a thick of depression. You can tell me all of the wonderful things about me, and I will still feel worthless. And it's really hard to know that, to be aware of that, to be sitting there thinking, I know that, so now I've got the guilt of feeling like I'm depressed, because I shouldn't be depressed because I have all these things. So now I'm going to beat myself up for being even more worthless, because now I shouldn't be. And the shame grows, and the guilt grows, and then the depression grows, and it just keeps building like that. And it's a really hard thing to kind of go through, to have a sort of distorted perception of reality and be aware of it. I can choose to be, oh, yeah.
I have a question. When you drew these, did you just draw the pictures, or did you also put the words on when you did this originally?
The words were on it originally. It was all kind of part and parcel. Yeah.
Okay.
They happened together.
Yeah, I was just wondering like, if you went back to try to make sense of the drawings and what it meant, or if you actually just...
No, it was all kind of, yeah. Good question. Thank you. I can choose to be broken or choose to be strong. And actually that, you bring up a really good point by asking that question. This was probably the 5th drawing that I did, but I didn't really get it until around 65. I did it, but I didn't really process what it meant. So it says, I can choose to be broken or choose to be strong. And some people will look at this and say, well, mental illness isn't a choice. And that's not what I'm saying. You're right. Mental illness is not a choice. But it is a choice as to whether or not I take care of myself. And that's a choice we all have. Are we going to take care of ourselves? Are we going to do the things that we need to do to be mentally healthy? And sometimes the choosing to be strong, doing those choices, aren't necessarily the things that you would expect. Which brings me to the next slide. It's okay to cry. If you hold back your tears, your body will find a different way to cry. It took me a long time to realize that I was actually being strong when I cried. I was actually being strong when I said to my family, I'm having a really bad day. That was strength. It wasn't a weakness to say I was having a bad day. But for so long, I did believe that it was. It's strength to say, I am really stressed out right now, and I need to take a few minutes. I need to walk away from this. I need to go sit by the pool for an hour, or I need to garden, or I need to go for a walk. I need to read a book. I need to meditate. I need to do yoga. I need to do whatever it is that I need to do to take care of myself, and that's okay. That is strength. It is not being weak to say I need a break. And we as a society don't look at it that way. We see it as the people who say, I need a break, are the weak ones. The people who can't do everything, who aren't Superman and Superwoman, the ones who can't always be on, they're the weak ones. But in fact, actually, they're the ones taking care of themselves. They're making that hard choice to be healthy and stepping back and not trying to do everything for everyone. I have a master's degree in patience with everyone except myself. We always hold ourselves to a totally different standard than we hold other people. We will expect so much more of ourselves. It's okay for somebody else to cry, but I can't. It's okay for somebody else to say, there's too much on my plate, I need to take a couple things off. But not me, my plate had better stay heaping full. That's our society. That's our culture. I don't know a whole lot about a lot of other cultures, but I do know that there are cultures that aren't like that. But here, and especially for people who are entrepreneurs and businessmen and businesswomen and people who are trying to really make it in the world, we don't have patience with ourselves. We're trying to be everything, do everything, be perfect, successful. There's no room for error, there's no room for mistake. And that is the worst thing you can do to your mind. Even during the most violent storm, the sun is still shining. You just have to wait for it to peek through the black clouds. So this actually happened to me. I was leaving Michigan at the time, actually to be admitted into a hospital. And it was an awful, rainy, gross day. And we got on the plane, and I was sort of feeling like, I love this weather. It just is exactly how I feel. It makes me feel like I'm okay because I'm in the muck of this weather, and I feel mucky, and it just all works great. And the plane took off, and it went through the clouds, and all of a sudden it was this beautiful day. And of course, I being in the depressed place I was like, oh, but it really struck me, and I actually drew this on the plane and thought, you know, you forget that it's going to be okay, that the moment will pass, that you'll get through it. We forget that all the time. You know, the deadline is coming and we've got to get to this and and do this and we forget that, you know what, eventually that moment will be gone and we'll be in a new moment. And that life isn't riding on that moment. We have a bad day. Maybe the bad day is a few bad days, a lot of bad days. But if we start taking care of ourselves and do the things we need to do to feel better, the sun will shine again. We can get through that moment. Slipping is so effortless. Staying balanced and healthy requires so much work. Sometimes I forget that it's worth it. We all know how much work it is to take care of ourselves, physically and emotionally. And we don't, as a culture, do a very good job of supporting that. We've started as a culture to support taking care of ourselves physically. There's gyms, and you know it's a good thing to go to the gym. You should go to the gym and eat a balanced diet, and restaurants are starting to have healthier menu items, and all that stuff is starting. So it's becoming a little bit more acceptable and a little bit more understood about taking care of yourself physically. But it's still a lot of work. Mentally, we don't have a lot of the resources that we need to take care of ourselves mentally. We don't allow for them. And we forget that it's important to take a day off of work. That's really important. It's important to go to bed at a decent time. It's hard when we live in a culture that is constantly trying to get us to do more and more and more and more, to remember to take care of ourselves and allow ourselves the time and the effort it is to take care of ourselves. And it is an effort to say, I am going to garden instead of work on this project that I have to get done by the end of the week. We forget that actually taking an hour to garden might actually make it easier to get the project done. Because we'll be more focused. We'll be more mentally well. We forget that. We keep plowing ahead. I still feel like I'm treading on the thin line, healthy versus unhealthy. But at least now I'm aware of it. Once you start taking care of your mental health, you start recognizing the signs a lot sooner. And you start knowing when you're not taking care of yourself. Maybe you start getting a twitch in your eye. Maybe you start noticing that you're getting a little bit more irritable with coworkers. Maybe you're noticing that you're getting a stomach ache and not wanting to eat very much. Whatever it is, you start noticing. You may not change anything. You may not do things differently, but at least you're aware. And awareness, I don't know, there's that old ad for, I don't remember what it was for, is it the Army? Where it's like, and knowing is half the battle?
GI.
Yeah. You know, and knowing is half the battle. It really is. Once you start becoming aware of it, then you can start changing it. But most of us kind of live in this denial world of, we don't have to take care of our minds. As long as we, are successful and do what we need to do, we're all good, right? Wrong. We're not. Our minds are the most important things we have to take care of. I will not surrender to my illness. I'll embrace my whole self. This was something that came out of, in my journey, this awareness that I didn't have to just be a depressed person. I didn't just have to be a person who had a disorder. I was so much more than that. And I think as a culture, we forget that we're so much more than one thing. Particularly in our jobs, we like to define ourselves as this is who we are. We are our job. But we're not. We're so much more than that. And there's so much more that defines us. And when we are embracing that, we become more whole as people. And we become more mentally well. Because there's all of us. Instead of, I am my job, or I am a parent, or I am this, you are all those things. And you need to be all of those things, because that's what makes you whole. So part of what happened after I did all these drawings and started having this awareness and started coming out as a mentally ill person, is I started sharing about my story. I started talking to people about it. I started showing my artwork. I actually made a traveling art show, and it went around so that people could see the drawings and start these conversations about mental illness, about mental wellness, about taking care of ourselves. And that was a huge part of my recovery, was actually sharing the stories. And then I started encouraging other people to share. I told my story, you want to tell yours? Come on, let's go. And at one point my traveling exhibit had something like 170 different pieces of artwork. It was crazy. I don't do that anymore. It's far too big of a project for one person to manage. But it was really cool to start seeing people come up and say, I want to tell my story too. I want to be part of this. I want other people to know that it's okay to take care of yourself mentally. And I want other people to know what it's like to struggle. I want them to understand. We heard the statistic, 1 in 4 people have a mental illness. Well, it's either you or someone you know. And if you can sit here and say, I don't know anybody with mental illness, then you're surrounded by a lot of people who are keeping it all in. Or you're in serious denial, one or the other. Because we're all affected. It's non-discriminatory. It's not like it's just the impoverished people who struggle with mental illness, or just this race. We all struggle. And even if you don't have mental illness, you struggle with mental wellness. We can't live in our culture and not. It's inherent in the craziness that is the United States. And the last part of my journey then became teaching others how to use expressive arts. So I didn't know at the time, but I discovered expressive arts. It's actually a thing. It's out there. People do this. I discovered it on an inpatient unit by myself because it made me feel better. But I discovered that there were actually people who do this. And I became one of them and started doing it and teaching. And it was amazing. Now, most of you are probably sitting there thinking, what is expressive arts? I don't really know, so I'm going to actually teach you. So this is another piece of my artwork. And what I did is I approached people from 3 different areas: the fine arts community, the art therapy community, and the expressive arts community. There's 3 very different communities with 3 very different trains of thought. And what I did is I asked them in their individual little categories to look at my piece of artwork and tell me about it. And so somewhere out there I have somebody who has a little fine arts card, and she's gonna stand up and read for us what the fine arts, the gallery owner, said about my artwork.
I noticed that you used a lot of red and blue and have 2 sides to the face. What is... Sorry?
You got expressive.
You're not my fine arts.
Oh,
Fine
sorry.
The artist's use of diverse media together with a split facial image depicts the torn emotional experience felt by the artist during creation. From the intricate use of design elements to the powerful color contrast, we can see the complex conflict that mental illness has on her life.
So that is what the gallery owner said. A lot of interpretation there. My art therapy person.
In your artwork, I see the internal struggle you feel between anger, the red, and sadness, the blue, and how you use sadness to try to cover up your anger. The floating nature of the face demonstrates how you don't feel grounded yet in your work with those 2 emotions.
Thank you. Again, some interpretation. Now it's in, rather than 3rd person, it's in 2nd person. It's you, this is you, what you're feeling, what it means. And now my expressive arts.
I noticed that you used a lot of red and blue and have 2 sides to the face. What is your piece saying to you? Tell me about the shapes and colors you used and how it made you feel.
Thank you. So expressive arts, there's no interpreting for anyone. The only person who can interpret it is the person who created it. There's a lot of, you tell me, what does it mean to you? You created it, you know what it means. And it's a very different philosophy than fine arts and art therapy. And it creates very different kinds of artwork. I can say that I am a fine artist as well. I create good art, as many people will say, but you don't have to be an artist to be an expressive artist. You can scribble, and it can tell you a lot about your emotions. And that's what we do at PeaceLove, is expressive arts. It's about experiencing and getting out emotions. And it may be beautiful artwork. It may be something that you want to hang on the wall. But it may also be a big, brown, ugly mess that nobody would ever put on a wall, but that explains something very important about what you're feeling emotionally. And that's what is important to me. It's not about the product, it's the process and the meaning. And in expressive arts, it's not just about making artwork, visual artwork. There's also poetry and writing. There's dance and movement and sound. There's like getting out and saying, this is how I feel, and doing these weird little movements and dances, and nobody's out there judging you and saying, wow, you can't dance. There are people out there saying, you're able to say, this is how I feel. Right now I feel like this. That says a lot. Than just saying, I feel angry. So that's what we do with expressive arts. And this is another piece of my artwork. You may have noticed that I have a lot of different styles. It really depends on how I'm feeling. And this I did as a freshman in high school. And this I realized many years after the fact that this was my first expressive art piece. And I did this piece of artwork on a day when I was actually suicidal. I was really, really struggling. And I had this whole plan of what I was gonna do. I was at school and I was just having one of the worst days of my life. And the assignment was to do the landscape. We opened the windows and we're all looking outside and do the landscape. And up until this point, my artwork, as you would say in fine art, was carefully rendered. It was very detailed, very organized, very realistic. And I sat down and did this, and I was scribbling and doing all kinds of motion. And my teacher came over and she was like, Amy, this is awesome. This is amazing. You are loosening up and you're rendering it with lots of movement. And you have crossed a bridge here. You're not controlling yourself, your drawing anymore. You're moving and you're using motion, and it's very loose rendering. That's what it's called, loose rendering. And I'm really proud of you for trying that technique. And I thought, okay, tried a good technique, right. She didn't ask me what it meant. She didn't ask me how I felt. She just complimented me on my technique. And so then I brought it home, and my mom was like, this is awesome, I love this drawing, this is great. Let's frame it and hang it in the main foyer so I can walk in every day and see the worst day of my life right there in a frame when I open the front door. Awesome! And again, nobody asked me what it meant. Nobody thought to ask me. It was just art, and it was pretty. If they had asked me, what they would have found out is that the reason it was loosely rendered was because I felt so out of control. And I couldn't be in control of the pencils. I was desperate and in despair. And the colors that I chose were not a depiction of the beautiful foliage that was out that time of year. The colors were my colors for depression. And this tree was not an experiential use of line and making this beautiful image. This was death. And I was drawing death because that's how I felt. I actually love this piece now. It makes me smile because it was my beginning of trying to get something out that I hadn't gotten out. And one of the things that I always say in expressive arts is, first thing is you gotta get it out. Whether it's pretty or not, doesn't matter. So I'm gonna share with you some stories of other expressive arts journeys. This was done by a kid at Bradley Hospital, which is a psychiatric hospital in Rhode Island. And we were talking about behaviors that we have where, that are holding us back or hurting us, that are not helping us to get better or be healthy. And this particular girl said, I isolate. When I'm upset, I isolate. And so this is how she depicted isolation. She's down here, and this is like a big wall, and all the people are over there. So she got that out. And then what we did is we ripped it up because it's not helping her anymore. And so she ripped it up and she made this out of the pieces. And she talked about how she has to remember that when she feels like isolating, it's really important then to surround herself with people and to go for a walk in nature and look for beautiful things. Now, is she never going to isolate again? Absolutely not. She's going to probably isolate many, many times in her life. But at least now she's a little bit more aware of it. And she has a little glimmer of what she could do differently. She's got a visual of what she could do differently. This artwork was done by a woman who came to PeaceLove, who is having a really tough time in her life. I don't know if she has a diagnosis of any mental illness or not, to be honest. She just was there and coming for programming. And we were talking about how we were feeling. We were doing a check-in drawing. How are you feeling? And so this is what she drew. And when she explained it, she said, all of this negativity is just coming right at me, just right into my gut. It's just coming. And this was her body, represented her body, and this is it all coming into her gut, heartbreak, pain, all this just yucky feelings. And behind her was beauty and love and peace, but she couldn't access it. It was behind her. She couldn't get to it. All she could feel was this darkness coming into her. So we talked about it, we wrote about it, we did a little meditation, and then she wanted to do another drawing. And this is what she created. And she wrote, peace with what is. And when she described it to me, her explanation was, you know, I got a lot of crap going on in my life. And it's dark and it's yucky and it doesn't feel good. But I feel more at peace with it. Hence the big peace sign. I feel more like I'm going to be able to handle it. I'm going to be able to get through it. And that's what expressive arts does, is it transforms things. It brings you to a new place where you can look at something a little bit differently. This is a mask done by one of our PeaceLove veterans. She is in our veterans program. And this was very early on in her experience with PeaceLove. She's been around now for a little over a year. And she described it as representing her depression. This is all her depression and sadness. And this is her chaotic thoughts, all kind of exploding all over the place. And she felt like she was a nobody, and she felt like nobody cared. And that's where she was on that particular day. Flash forward a few months, and she created this mask. And she said of her mask, she said she still has a lot of depression. She still feels like she's, hiding and alone. But then there are some days where she's hopeful. And there are some days where she feels inspired. And there are some days where she feels strong. And that's what this side represented to her. Flash forward a few more months, and she created this mask. And when she described it, she said, I feel like my life is starting over. And I feel like I have new direction. At that point, she was now volunteering at PeaceLove. She had friends. She had never had friends. She actually threw a birthday party at PeaceLove and had people and friends there, where a year prior, she wouldn't have had anybody to invite. And she talked about how she still had lots of thoughts, and they were still a little out of control, but she was able to look at them more carefully now and feel contained about them. And then this part here, you can't really see it in the slide, but there's a little elephant right here. And she described herself as the elephant, a strong person who is heading out on her own. She was feeling brave and strong. She could do it. Pretty cool to see that sort of transformation happening through expression, getting feelings out, allowing yourself to feel the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's important for mental health. So I thought I would show you a little bit more of my artwork, and then I'll pass it on to Dre. So this was the artwork that I did after my book. And you'll notice that I'm no longer a stick figure. I've now become a wholer person, and I think that's because I was starting to recognize more of who I was, all of me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I call this embrace because I was feeling like I was being embraced by people around me who are taking care of me, who are helping me on this journey. A couple of years later, I made this, which is again a transformation of feeling hopeful and strong, feeling more comfortable with who I was. I wasn't lying anymore. I wasn't holding this deep, dark secret. I was more authentic in me. A few more years later, and I created this. I was studying chakras, and if you don't know what chakras are, it's the centers of the body, and I was, tried yoga, wasn't very good at keeping up with yoga, but tried it. And I was definitely more at peace with myself and all of myself and taking care of myself. I was doing the things I needed to do to be healthy. And then I bring you to this piece, which I did 2 years ago. And this piece represents yet another transformation, but not necessarily a good one. I stopped taking care of myself. It got too hard. I had too much I wanted to do. I was busy. I had great things. I was at PeaceLove. I was doing wonderful things. I was taking care of everybody else. Who cares about taking care of me? I can do everything, right? There are people to save. There are people to take care of. And I crashed and burned. Because when you don't take care of your mental health, it takes care of you. It lets you know. And that's what happened here. And I started doing artwork again. And this artwork sort of represents the dichotomy to me of being someone who is calm and collected, but also someone who struggles with depression. And both are true. And this is called speaking truth. And sometimes the truth seems contradictory. Sometimes the person who's smiling is also crying on the inside. And that's what this represented to me. So I end my presentation with this slide. This is a slide that is another newspaper article, very different from the first one. And this one I am proud of. I'm not ashamed of. I didn't keep it to remind myself of a secret. I keep it to remind myself of what happens when you take care of yourself. This was an article that was written about my book and about my work and healing through art. And I was on the front page, which was exciting. I thought I was going to be in section 8H, page 12. And when it came out, it was on the front page, and I was like, oh my God, I'm on the front page. And I was saying, I'm on the front page and I have mental illness. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not going to be silent. I'm not going to hold that secret. I'm not going to be ashamed. I'm going to talk about it, so maybe other people will start talking about it. And that's what I'm doing here today. I'm talking about it. So thank you very much. Oh, and did I mention that you guys get a copy of my book?
Yes.
Yes. And I do hope that you're staying for the expressive arts experience, especially those of you who say, oh my God, I'm not an artist, I can't do this. You can, you will, and it will be fun.